Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Frank King is a suicide prevention speaker, has been a writer for The Tonight Show for over 2 decades, and has been a speaker and comedian for 38 years. He's shared the stage with comedians Jeff Foxworthy, Adam Sandler, Jerry Seinfeld, Dr. Ken Young, Ellen DeGeneres, Dennis Miller, and Bill Hicks, as well as entertainers Lou Rawls, The Beach Boys, Randy Travis, and Nancy Wilson, among others. His speaking on suicide prevention is informed by his lifetime battle with depression and suicidality, and he has turned that into that long and dark journey of the soul into 12 TEDx Talks, sharing his life-saving insights with colleagues, corporations, and associations. On top of all of that, he has survived 2 aortic valve replacements, a double bypass, a heart attack, and losing to a puppet on the original Star Search. Wow, that's hilarious. And has lived a joke about all of it. Frank also started bodybuilding in his 60s while he has been intermittent fasting and eating a ketogenic diet, and he is definitely in better shape now than he was in his 50s. You can find Frank on all social media, including Facebook at The Mental Health Comedian and on Instagram at Mental Health Comedian. Frank King, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
I wish I could say the same. Casey, it's part of a plea bargain. Really, it's...
We understand. We understand. Thank you for taking the time to do this. I have to just ask right off the bat, what was it like to write for The Tonight Show?
Well, what happened was Leno was the permanent guest host for Johnny way back when. Joan Rivers got blown out because she did her own late night talk show and forgot to tell Johnny she was going to do it, pissed him off.
Funny.
Gary Shandling didn't have time. He was doing the Gary Shandling show on HBO, so that left Leno to be the only. Now, what would happen is Carson would come up on a Friday night and tell the staff he was taking the next week off, which meant Leno was responsible for those monologues the following week. He had to come up with 18 jokes per monologue for all those evenings over the weekend. So he got the idea to start hiring road comics like me and a bunch of my friends under contract to send him jokes so that he could fill out those monologues. And when he got the job for real, he let most of the contract labor go, but he kept some of us working for a distance for him until he left for CNBC.
Wow, that's interesting. And you were paid by the joke, is that correct?
Yes, it was all on spec. If he bought the joke in the beginning, it was $50. By the end, it was $75. And there were ancillary benefits. I got a job in radio, and my manager said to me, do you have somebody famous who could, sing your praises on video to help promote the show? And Leno made a little short video. Hey, I heard Frank King quit comedy to go to work for radio. When I had my first open heart surgery in 95, first person to call me in my room after I got out of ICU was Leno.
Wow.
Hey, heard you had heart surgery. Good thing you didn't do it in California. They take it out and leave it out. And most recently, we've written I and 2 co-authors have written 4 books on men's mental health. And so I called Helga, his assistant. I said, Helga, do you think Jay would write a blurb for the cover of book 4 to help with the sales? And he wrote me a blurb for the cover of book 4. So a really nice guy.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. What was the best joke you ever wrote?
Let's see. I had 2 jokes on his very first show. The first one was, it's about the time of the Rodney King incident. A guy got stung to death by bees in Texas at roughly the same time. So the joke was, the guy in Texas got stung to death by bees. Turns out they weren't killer bees. They were just regular honeybees upset over the Rodney King verdict. And the other one was Dan Quayle, former vice president at the time. Murphy Brown was a sitcom starring Candace Bergen. And on the sitcom, she got pregnant as a single mom. And so somebody asked Quayle about it. Quayle goes, I think having a child out of wedlock mocks the importance of fathers. And then he said, where would I have been without my dad? And I added the punchline, my guess, Vietnam. So I had 2 jokes on his very first. Now, the worst one, and he and I thought it was funny. 60 Minutes did a story on the graduation rate of basketball players at Duke versus UNLV. Duke graduated 94% of their Division I basketball players, and UNLV graduated like 14%. And they asked one of the UNLV players about that, and he said, oh, twice as many. I thought that was hysterical. But the audience just stared at Jay. I'm home like, oh, God. Oh, God. But he liked it. Oh, there's one more. People ask me how I wrote. I would record on old VCR the monologue because I go to bed early. I get up next morning, I watch it, I make note of all the jokes he tells because he obviously likes those premises. See if I couldn't write a better joke. So one of them was, Swiss are now they built a factory. They're making condoms. Are you sure you want to buy a condom from a country that makes cheese with holes in it? And I thought there's got to be a better joke. And so what I sent in was, the Swiss, they got a condom factory now. But the Swiss, it's not just a condom. It's a condom. It's a corkscrew. It's a screwdriver. It's a pair of scissors.
Those are good.
Thank you very much.
Man, I love it. I look back on some of those old, nighttime shows with Johnny Carson. Like those hold up, man. He was funny. Leno was really funny. Through the 90s to have The Simpsons had amazing writing. Seinfeld had amazing writing. Like that was a really good age to be in comedy. And obviously that's, really light and fun. And we're going to be talking about something much more serious in this conversation today. And I just want to ask you why, yeah, right? Why is it that you can take something that's about as serious as it gets, which is suicide, talking about suicide, and make it also something funny, amusing that we can laugh about?
Well, there's a rule in comedy. Comedy is tragedy plus time. Just have to, allow a certain amount of time. And I don't tell jokes about suicide. What I tell is personal, funny anecdotes. For example, I say to the audience, I came close enough to killing myself. I can tell you what the barrel of my gun tastes like. Spoiler alert, I did not pull the trigger. They start giggling nervously. I said, no, it's okay to laugh. That was the point. And then I say, a friend of mine came up after a keynote recently and he said, and I quote, hey, man, how come you didn't pull the trigger? And I said, hey, man, could you try to sound slightly less disappointed?
Jesus.
That's where, in my first TEDx, I started very seriously. 8 million people think about it, 1.4 million attempt. And then I said, I did some research, figuring I would look and see how other people handled the topic of suicide on TEDx, figuring when I went to the website, there'd be dozens of talks. There were 3 talks on suicide. And I said to the audience, then it hit me. Well, if you're really good at suicide, you're not going to be recording a TEDx. Now they realize this is going to be a little bit different. So, and there's a psychological principle. If you have to tell somebody something difficult, and then you give them a little comic relief, their brain is much more ready for the next piece of difficult business. So, it just keeps them a little off balance. And somebody came up to me this past week. I did a suicide prevention keynote in Columbus, Ohio for 800 construction people. And somebody came up afterwards and said, I went to something very similar last year in Florida, an hour. And it was all death and morbidity and mortality and somber. People were hanging their heads. And, the humor makes it go down a lot easier, makes it memorable, helps reduce the stigma. They see me up there talking about, put a gun in my mouth and I have 2 mental illnesses and, my family history, more nuts than in a squirrel turd in my family. And so it makes it acceptable to talk about it out loud.
Well, I really appreciate that. I appreciate the way you approach your content. I've been able to watch several of your TED Talks, and you do a very, very good job. Obviously, all of them have a different kind of angle you're tackling this at. But kudos to you for making it more approachable to us, again, to get this on the table and talk about it, because a lot of us, if we're not experiencing what you have experienced in your life, we don't know what we can do to help support. I think a lot of people want to be supportful for people who are experiencing suicidality. We just don't know exactly how to bring it up and what to say. And one thing that really struck me about your content, you talk about your family history quite a bit, and this definitely runs in your family. At a very young age, you were exposed to some, very traumatic situations. If you don't mind, I understand if you do mind, but if you don't mind, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, we should do a trigger warning for your audience. We're going to cover a subject and subject matter that's very difficult, could be shocking to some, may trigger some. So if suicide, the description of a suicide is going to trigger you, for goodness sakes, step out for about 90 seconds, then come back. You don't want anybody to get, triggered. My grandmother died by suicide. My mother found her. 9 years later, my mother could not reach my great aunt on the phone, got panicked, and given our family history, decided to bundle me into the car, and we drove over to her apartment. And I was 4 years old, let ourselves in, and nothing amiss, really, until we got to the kitchen. And then everything that should have been in the refrigerator, milk, butter, eggs, cheese, was on the counter. And it wasn't a refrigerator with a magnetic strip to hold the door closed. It was one of those with a latch that, when people disposed of them back then, they always took the door off because kids would invariably crawl in, pull the door and can't get out. So what had happened, and my mother didn't realize it, was my great aunt had taken everything out of the fridge, crawled in, pulled the door to behind her. Now she can't get out. And at some point, apparently, she had changed her mind and tried to claw her way out. So my mother, me hanging onto her skirt tail, swings the door open. My great aunt falls out and pins me to the floor. And we are face to face, and her face is frozen in that last moment of horror, fingernails broken, bloody. I screamed for days, apparently. And you know what? I blocked it out. I walled it off. I did not remember. And so my family came up with a myth that I was to be told if I ever asked, that when my mother swung the door open, there was my great aunt sitting with her, her hands folded in prayer, looking serene. Well, when I was 50-ish, I told my cousin, who's 10 years older, that story about serene, hands folded in prayer. And he goes, man, that's bullshit. The old bat fell out on you and pinned you to the floor, and it all came rushing back.
Whoa.
I could see it again. I mean, whatever was holding it back just crumbled, which was kind of the beginning of my genesis from funny speaker to speaker who's funny, and then talking about suicide prevention. But my mother's generation didn't talk about that kind of thing. They didn't wasn't spoken about openly. But it should have been my family. I mean, everybody in my family has some sort of psychotropic issue, and they're on meds, except for one cousin, and we hate him. But no, we love him dearly. He just dodged that bullet, pardon the pun. So yeah, that is, and it definitely runs in families. It's called generational depression and suicide. So people ask me, can you get cured? No, it's in my DNA. Here's the good news, guys. In my DNA, along with the mental illness, most of my family is very funny. So that is, and I think my depression and thoughts of suicide are simply the flip side of my comedic ability, imagination, timing. There's a reason when somebody heckles me that I can, without even thinking. Young woman was leaving a club. They were throwing her out. She's drunk. She's almost out the door. And then all of a sudden she's turning back toward me on stage. And I guess she heard something sounded like her name because drunks are voice activated. And she screams, F you. And I just said, no, honey, not even for practice. And got a standing ovation. And people came up and asked me afterwards, how'd you think that up? I go, I didn't think that up. When you heard it, I heard it. I had no idea where that came from. It just came screaming out of the back of my head. There's a reason I can do that without even thinking. And it's just that crazy wiring, I think.
Wow. You're born to be a hockey player. We call that chirping in hockey. You'd be great at hockey.
What's chirping?
Chirping is just giving people shit, and the quicker you are, the better hockey player you're going to be. And it's especially with your teammates. It's not even with the other team. It's usually your buddies and your teammates. You always got to keep them humble. You'd be great at that.
Oh yeah, because I mean, I'm telling you, I don't know. It's kind of a dirty story from Carnival. I mean, is this a family show or is this
People can turn this off. It's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. I'll warn you. This is a dirty joke.
Perfect.
I was doing Carnival. I don't work Carnival anymore as a comic because they don't pay much, and they work you 3 shows a night, 6 days a week. But the late show, they come for a fight, a verbal fist fight. They're drunk and they want to take the comic down. I have friends who won't work it because they can't handle the crowd. So the MC comes out and says, look, this is a late show. It's an adult show. If you're easily offended, get the fuck out now. That's the MC. So I get on stage, I grab the microphone. I haven't said anything yet. Nothing. Guy in the front row screams, top of his lungs, you suck. Well, you can't let that go. I go, yeah, you fucking swallow. And standing ovation, guys coming up and high-five me on stage. Couldn't do any wrong after that.
That's amazing. Quick, man. I love it. Quick drama.
It's, in comedy, you got to be able to take a punch and come back. Otherwise, I mean, they'll chase you off. They smell blood in the water. They'll come after you.
Wow. That's crazy. Well, one of my favorite TED Talks you did talked about how this type of mental kind of disorder could actually be evolutionarily very advantageous to us. And I think we know this about people that get migraines or people that are bipolar or people that get autistic. Like there's certain gifts that would have benefited us in the past. And now we've changed the circumstances and our lifestyles are so different that it kind of flips things on its head. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. The way it opens is this. What if those of us with a mental illness are not living with a genetic mutation, but an amazing evolutionary adaptation? What if mental illness is, as Malcolm Gladwell says, of such things in his book, David and Goliath, a desirable disadvantage? You never wish it on anybody. However, and the reason I did that, two reasons. One was for kids. Two was because I kept bumping into people who had some kind of mental challenge, but had some other amazing. I mean, Kanye West, politics aside, is one of the musical geniuses of his generation. Unfortunately, he's not a public relations genius. That would have been a nice combination. But he is definitely a musical genius. And you look through, there's a book called Bipolar Advantage. And the first person profile is Alexander Hamilton. And from historical reports, it appears that he was living with bipolar, stayed up, days on end, wrote prodigiously, hypersexual, then would crash and burn. And what you said, Casey, is that evolution, in terms of evolution, if you had ADD or ADHD and you're a cave person, and I'm the chief, I'm going to have you walk in point and behind us, because you got a head on a swivel, and you're not going to miss much that's going on out there. Dyslexics, I would have a dyslexic walking right next to him, because dyslexics have the amazing ability oftentimes to spot the anomaly in anything. So, you're looking at a tree line. I'm guessing the dyslexic would go, you see that one right in the middle with the leaves changing? That's not a tree. That's a guy wearing leaves. My joke was, never play Where's Waldo with a dyslexic for money, because you're going to lose in a hurry, because they just spot it. And I have yet to meet a parent of a child where the child wasn't completely dysfunctional, that didn't have some other amazing ability. And that's one of the reasons I did the talk. I said, what if we could change the frame for young people? Yeah, you've got a mental disability. That's and let's treat that. But what you probably haven't heard, son, is I bet you've got an amazing ability your peers can't touch. So why don't we wrap our arms around, embrace, and celebrate whatever that mental ability is? And 2 years later, on 60 Minutes, they had a show, and they're talking about the 30 Fortune 500 companies in the U.S. hiring people on the spectrum for the one single thing they do better than anybody else. I was 2 years ahead of 60 Minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. And they're paying them handsomely, because about 80% of people on the spectrum, once they graduate high school, unemployment's like 80%.
Wow. Wow. That's so fascinating. Okay, so for somebody who is experiencing suicidality, you mentioned, reaching out. Tell somebody that you need help. What other things would you tell somebody who is in that spot? They're experiencing suicidality, and then I'll ask you the follow-up question later, which is the rest of us. What can we do to help support people that are expressing signs and symptoms of being suicidal?
Well, the first thing I would say is, if they're experiencing, if either they tell you or your gut tells you they're suicidal, then you need to ask them flat out, are you having thoughts of suicide? Just like that. No dancing around it. No, are you going to do something stupid? Are you having thoughts of suicide? And if they say yes, then say, okay, do you have a plan? And if they have a plan, what is your plan? And if their plan is detailed, time, place, and method, then you need to get them to a mental health facility as soon as possible, just for evaluation, to find out what the hell is going on, or get them dial 988. If they won't dial it, you dial it, and the volunteer at the Suicide Prevention Lifeline will do their best to talk the phone into the hand of the person in crisis. Now, and this is nothing I ever read or took or learned in a class. A psychologist and I came up with this, because we wondered, well, let's say they got a plan, but it's not really detailed. Not really. What would you do? We decided we would say, okay, tell me, are you going to kill yourself? And if they said no, then I would say, all right, tell me why not. Make them give voice to whatever's keeping them here, because something is keeping them here. Otherwise, they'd be gone. It could be parents, pets, religion, who knows? But whatever they have going on that's keeping them here, then you try to leverage that to keep them alive for another day.
Yeah, that is very, very helpful. Okay, so I'm going to tag all of your TEDx talks, and I would refer people to go and watch them. They're all very good. Like I said, I've really enjoyed watching them. And again, they're all kinds of different angles. One thing I don't get to hear you talk a lot about that's going to be very pertinent to our audience is talking about what we mentioned in the introduction. You've had a lot of personal health issues that eventually kind of made you start to change your own life and lifestyle, change your diet a little bit, and start strength training and bodybuilding. Can you tell us a little bit about your own personal physical health journey and how you discovered some of these things like low carbohydrate diets?
Yes, I've had 2 aortic valve replacements. My mom gave me the crazy. My dad gave me a bad aortic valve, a bicuspid instead of a tricuspid. So in 95, I had it replaced, had it replaced with a human valve from a donor, either a cadaver or an attorney who wasn't using it. And then it lasted 18 years, which is a long time for a human valve, especially one that's got miles on it. And I had to have it done again, and I got a mechanical valve. 2012, I got a mechanical valve, and a double bypass because it was 2 for Tuesday. And 2014, 2 years later, those bypassed arteries colluded on the same day. Wow. And I was in the woods with the dogs, half a mile from the car, had a heart attack. Knew it was a heart attack. Had no doubt it was a heart attack. And I had T-Mobile, so I didn't have cell service. And that always gets a laugh.
That's good.
And now I have AT&T. I'm not rolling those dice again. So I had to walk out half mile. I had the dogs with me. I knew if I didn't get the dogs in that vehicle, there's a busy road not too far from where we parked, and it could end really badly. We're like the Marine Corps. We don't leave anybody behind. So I thought, look, if I can get the dogs in the car, I could drop dead, that's fine. So I got them in the car, didn't drop dead, drove home 2 miles, yelled to my wife, dial 911, I'm having a heart attack. This is what I heard, Casey. I'm in the bathroom. I got the fan on. I can't hear you. I walked half a mile, drove 2, and I'm going to drop dead in my hallway. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and then called 911. And there are three EMTs live on our street, fortunately.
Wow. They
all came rushing down in their personal cars. I mean, I had, within 90 seconds, 3 guys working on me. They're feeding me nitroglycerin like Tic Tacs. It's not doing anything. So they transport me, and I'm in the tree. And you get to the hospital, Casey, you have a heart attack. There's no waiting. No paperwork.
Yeah.
They just rush you back to your little triage unit. Yeah. So now, the longer you do comedy, the shorter the time between the tragedy and I was doing comedy in real time. I'm in a great deal of pain, but the nurse said, Frank, I just got to ask you one question. I said, honey, I'm married, but I love the way you think.
Oh my God, that's great.
She's trying not to laugh. She goes, no, your full name's Frank Marshall King III. What do you like to be called? Through the pain, Casey, Big Daddy. So to this day, when I go back to Oregon Heart and Vascular, if I see somebody from that morning, hey, Big Daddy, how's it hanging? So aortic valve job, double bypass, heart attack, 3 stents. And I'd always wanted to be a bodybuilder from the time I was reading the Charles Atlas ads in the back of comic books as a kid and the Joe Weider ads, but I realized I've got really fine bones. I'm sure it's being from North Carolina and all the inbreeding in my family. So I knew I couldn't win 20, 30, 40, 50, but I thought, you know what? If I wait till I'm 60, I bet you everybody else will quit. And sure enough, there are very few bodybuilders, male or female, over 60. So I got my courage up. 2018, I registered for the contest, which is going to be in July. And I decided that I was going to go on the keto diet starting January 1st, 2018. And so I did. And then a couple of months later, I read a book on fasting, Eat, Stop, Eat, on intermittent fasting. So then I began to fast. And I got, for that first contest, my body fat down to about 8% between the keto, which is a great combination of the two, because with keto, you don't get that carbohydrate ride. The keto, you pretty much, and so I've been doing it ever since. And last month, I ate for 6 hours and I didn't eat again until the next day. So I was doing 18.6. This month, I'm doing eating every other day. So I'm doing like 42.6. And then April, I'm going to do every third day. Wow. Until I get till July to get my body fat back down, because I'm so fine boned, unless I'm just shredded. But last year, 40 and over, pro qualifier, a guy 68 won.
Wow. So
it's doable. It's and I got to tell you, Casey, they love me because I've always got something planned. I don't know if you know, you have to do a minute of posing, double bicep, whatever. Every year I choose a fun song, not a rock anthem like most guys do, some hardcore. Boom, boom. This year I chose Kung Fu fighting. So I did a kata, a Taekwondo kata. And each time I stopped, because you do it around the compass, each time I stopped, double bicep, whatever. And when I got back around the front, a friend of mine gave me this idea. He goes, here's how you got to close. So with like 8 seconds to go, I'm standing there and I did the crane from Karate Kid and did the kick. And I mean, the place exploded.
Yes.
Yeah, an 8-year-old came up and goes, "Man, you're so funny." I said, "Do you know how long it's been since an 8-year-old told me I was funny?" But everybody remembers that. I mean, everybody, so yeah, I haven't got this year. I think I'm going to do the same martial art, probably, but this time I've got a pair of the foam nunchucks. I'm thinking about, getting to where I can get good enough at it that I can use those in the routine. And I'm working on a full split.
Oh,
I think I
nice.
can drop into a full split at 67.
Epic.
That's
Dude,
yeah,
that's
but
epic.
I was in the gym anyway for my cardio, and I was lifting, but I wasn't, diet. I got a good diet, but when I got specific about the diet, specific about the fasting, changed my workout a little bit, and I've got a 66-pound weight vest. And I get on the treadmill and I walk forward 2 minutes, backwards 2 minutes, side to side, side to side 2 minutes. So, because most guys don't train their legs. And apparently the longest muscle in the body is the sartorius. And my opposing coach goes, "Oh my God, I can see your sartorius. Nobody your age, you can see the sartorius." That's the benefit of that 66-pound weight vest, walking 30 minutes at
Wow.
an 18-degree.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's a bitch. But guys, they even created a category for guys who don't want to work their legs. It's called men's physique. They just train from the waist up. I mean, are you really you're half a bodybuilder, really?
Right. The most important part.
Um,
Wow.
I know. So I thought, screw it. I'm gonna go for toes to head. I'm not gonna
Good for you. Good for you. Yeah, I haven't been to many bodybuilding shows, but I've been to some, and the routines that I remember the most are like that, where it's not just like the purpose is not just to get to a pose and then to get to another pose. It's like there's choreography and there's a purpose, and it's the kind of the movement between the poses that make it really unique, and you see more of like the beauty of it, the human body that way. So I love that you approach it that way. I'm okay. What kind of trepidation did you have about originally going to a ketogenic diet, a higher fat, lower carbohydrate diet, when you are a person who has survived all those things that you described, the heart attack? Why on earth did you feel like going a high fat, high saturated fat, presumably type diet would be a good idea for you?
Well, because everything I'd read about it, and I actually read about the diet back in college in the 70s when it was the Atkins diet. And at 14 hours, you've gone through the last meal in your body. You've gone through all the glycogen or something in your liver. You got nothing to burn except fat. And so it just made sense. And I'm on medication for cholesterol, and have been since forever. But this past physical, my cholesterol was 144, which is the lowest it's ever been.
Wow.
My LDLs were well over under 100, which is where you want to be,
Yeah.
closer to 75. And that's eating, mayonnaise and shrimp and so yeah, it just seems to work for me. I guess, I believe it. And then intermittent fasting helps because once again, you pass 14 hours, you're burning fat.
That's right. That's right. And everybody
And
says the same thing when you're doing an extended fast. It's like, yeah, you'll get to 24, 36 hours and you'll be a little bit hungry, but it's not like linear hunger where the longer you go, the more hunger you have. It's more like a wave where, yeah, you might be a little hungry, but that goes away. And all of a sudden you find you have tons of energy because you are doing what you described so well. You're burning all the body fat you already have on the body. And so you don't necessarily need to be eating all the time.
no, everybody I've talked to who's ever done it says, and I believe this, same for me, day 2 is the toughest. Once you've gone through that second 24-hour period, on the 5th day, I've done 5 days once. My workout partner said to me, "You're stronger on day 5 than you were on day 1." He goes, "I think they've been feeding you to hold you back." That's my
Well said.
kryptonite.
Well said. I would not have believed it had I not experienced that exact same thing myself. When I had a client, he was doing weekday fasting when he was getting really, really good results, and he would come in on Friday morning after having fasted for 5 days. We would do lower body on Friday, and he would PR deadlifts. If I hadn't like seen that, I would think there's no way you would have more energy. But once you understand those mechanisms, it makes perfect sense. Your body has plenty of energy already. Of course, you're going to be able to do more in that state. That's how we evolved, like you talk about in your talk. It's part of what made us human, and we can fast for a very, very long time. It's a really healthy state.
Yeah, it's feast or famine didn't come out of nowhere. That's how our ancestors worked. And by the way, breakfast, if my advice to people, look, if you're gonna miss a meal, miss breakfast. We're not designed to eat breakfast. That's BS from the cereal companies. That's the most important meal of the day. If you're gonna fast, I would fast from like noon to midnight. No, I'd fast from 6 p.m. to noon, 6 p.m. to noon, because that morning just have a cup of coffee with MCT oil or something just to get you over the hump. And I am hungry. I do find myself staring at hamburger ads or billboards, but it's not like I'm ravenous. I can have a cup of tea with some MCT oil in it, or a cup of chicken broth with some heavy cream, and it's just enough to take that edge off.
That's awesome. Well, we have lost T-Mobile as a potential show sponsor, and we've also lost cereal companies. So thanks a lot for that.
Sorry, man.
Our marketing and advertising department is pissed off, but that's okay. So we talk about like aging and how important it is as we age to protect our muscle. We want to be able to make sure we're eating plenty of protein. We're doing strength training. It keeps our bones healthy, our muscle mass good. Like we know how important that is. We know it's harder as we age, but you're doing it in your 60s. What tips and tricks would you tell people as far as like increasing muscle mass and why that's so important?
Well, my belief is, and I tell people this, I don't lift a lot of weights. I lift weights a lot. As part of my self-care plan, as a mental illness patient, diet, exercise, good night's sleep, meditation, medication. And my one non-negotiable is, I believe in having one non-negotiable in your self-care plan is working out. I try to do it every day of the week. I do chest, tries, and shoulders one day, and then buys, traps, and chest, and then legs. So I'm rotating body parts. And of course, every day I walk with that 66-pound weight vest because my legs, I'm like most guys, I ignored my legs for decades. I'll work my legs tomorrow. And I don't like squats, but I thought, I started at 30 pounds with the weight vest. And slowly but surely, I built up to 66 pounds. And now I'm going to get a diving weight belt and probably add another 20 over time.
Oh my
so it'll be up to 80. Well, the military and the Army, you carry an 80-pound pack. So when I heard that, I thought, okay, all right. If they can do it, I can do it. So, and people go, do you run? Oh, God, no. Can you imagine running with that kind of weight? Your knees would be gone in a day. I just walk about a mile, 1.1 mile an hour, just enough to keep moving. And so I would say consistency beats commitment every time. I'm going to commit to, no, be consistent.
Yeah.
Do it every day or 6 days a week, whatever, 5 days a week. And I would do the keto diet, and I would intermittent fast, even if it's just fasting a couple of days a week, or doing 18-6, which seems to be the most popular. 6 hours eating, 18 fasting. That seems to be the most popular and easy.
Yeah. Quite easy.
Yeah, I mean that's a piece of cake.
Yeah.
I wouldn't eat the cake, but
there you go. A piece of cake or piece of steak, excuse me, even better.
Yeah, piece of steak.
Amazing. Okay, so when you started doing low carbohydrate ketogenic diets, did you do it for the purpose primarily of body composition?
Yes, I did, because I was getting ready for that contest. Started January 1st, sometime in the summer on keto. Sometime in the summer, I read the book, 2 books actually, Complete Book of Fasting, and then they recommended Eat Fast Eat for bodybuilders. So eat, stop, eat. So I did it specifically to get lean, and it worked. So I've just kept on, when I'm after the contest, I'm doing 18-6. I did that till about January 1st, and I began to back off, extend the period of fasting slowly but surely.
Interesting.
And I figure, and some of my friends on this, that I compete with, young people, you're going to take a few months off? Dude, I'm 67. There is no time off.
Love it. Savage.
Yeah, there is no time. Well, here's the thing. There's a lot of big guys at the gym. I mean, just monstrous. even guys who are on steroids, just huge, but it takes a whole different set of balls to get up on stage in panties and pose for 60 seconds in front of 300 people.
Seriously.
I mean, that's a whole different, I'm a bodybuilder. Have you ever competed? No, then you're not a bodybuilder. You need to get up there and I'm terrified. I mean, I opened up for Randy Travis 2 nights, 5,000 people a night in an amphitheater, didn't even break a sweat. 300 people, me in panties. I'm terrified.
Wow. Well, good for you. It's amazing that you were able to do that. And we know that with ketogenic diets, there's all these other like side benefits that we've been learning about. And now that we have the work of Dr. Georgia Ede and Dr. Chris Palmer, both of our authors writing about low carbohydrate and ketogenic diets for mental health, how has your own mental health changed, and how have you seen it in others when they're willing to change the diet and drop out the carbohydrates and get the brain running on ketones themselves? What have you noticed with your own mental health and those around you who have tried it as well?
Well, for years, I was eating carbohydrates and I would get that rush and then crash. I guess I was carbohydrate sensitive. I've got a friend named Steve Kelly. He can drink a Mountain Dew, eat a Snickers bar, and he doesn't crash and burn. I have no idea how he does that.
Wow.
If I did that, I'd be waking up face down in a pool of my own saliva in about an hour.
Yep.
So it's my mood doesn't fluctuate like it used to when I was doing carbs. It's much more level. And maybe not everybody's that carbohydrate sensitive, but I mean, I loved sugar as a kid. That was my crack. And I just, and now I've been off, I haven't had white sugar in 3 decades. If I ate it now, I would undoubtedly throw up, get hungover, because I think your body loses the ability over time to process white sugar. A stevia, a sucralose. I'd rather not do aspartame. I don't really trust aspartame, but sucralose and stevia, I don't have any problem with.
Yeah, it's nice to find those alternates. Dude, it was even just yesterday. I cooked up an entire batch of bacon and I started eating it. And it was like 30 minutes later, my stomach started to hurt. I'm like, why is my stomach aching? And sure enough, I checked the package. The second ingredient is brown sugar. Like, seriously, in bacon? There's very, very few ways to ruin bacon. And that is the primary way to ruin bacon. That sucks.
Yeah, and bacon is one of the great things. I was just at it was a Hampton Inn or a Hyatt, and they had a real good breakfast. They had real eggs, not the kind that comes in a jug, and they had link sausage and had real bacon. And I'm that's my big meal of the day because it's on them.
Perfect.
I got bacon and sausage and eggs and maybe a little cream cheese on here, maybe some butter on the eggs. But it seems I feel a little guilty sometimes, but it works. It's
Yep, not exactly suffering eating those foods.
No, although, the Danish look really good.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. Not worth it, though. It's absolutely not worth it. And this has been an amazing conversation. I know we have some time issues today, but I'm just so grateful for your message and willing to talk about all of these things that are so important. Like I said, we'll tag everything in the show notes. But in the meantime, where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you and your work?
Oh, okay. I got a big presence on LinkedIn. Just type in Frank King Comedian, you'll find me. What you'll find is that on LinkedIn, I just market my make money speaking. I'll do, I believe you need to market one thing on LinkedIn, and that's what I chose. I market the mental health stuff. My mental health website is mentalhealthcomedian.com, mentalhealthcomedian.com.
Awesome. We will get that linked. And like I said, Frank, thank you so very much for taking the time to have this conversation and talk about some really serious and dark things, but in a way that's not light, but at least in a way that you can make it more approachable the way that you explained, and to also know that your story coincided with a change in your diet and your lifestyle, and that you're thriving and kicking ass, getting younger and younger and younger, even though chronologically you're getting older and older. It's awesome. It's great to see the pictures and you just out there thriving and sharing your message. So thank you, Frank, so very much for taking the time to be on our show today. We're just super appreciative of you.
Oh, my pleasure, man. When I'm on stage, you can see the titanium twist ties in my chest, which occasionally people are like,
wow.
God. Yeah, well, because you get body fat down that far, there's nothing hiding the twist ties that hold your chest together.
Wow.
So it's pretty wicked looking. Somebody goes, what happened, man? Knife fight.
Good call. You should see the other guy. Frank, this is amazing. Thank you again so very much for taking time to be on our show today. We appreciate you.
Well, thanks for having me on, Casey.
Absolutely. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio. Thank you so very much for continuing to listen to Boundless Body Radio. As 2023 has come to a close and we're starting another new year in 2024, I always try to reflect on not only the direction that we want to go in the future, but also how much we have grown in this last year. Our podcast has now generated well over 400,000 downloads from all over the world, and it's all thanks to fantastic listeners like yourself. I hope you are as excited for the new year as we are around here. The lineup of guests that we have coming up is absolutely staggering, and we're always striving to bring you the best content from the most amazing people in health, nutrition, and wellness. Remember that you can always head on over to our website to book a complimentary 30-minute session with us at myboundlessbody.com. On our homepage, there is a Book Now button where you can select a time to speak with us about your health and fitness plan, especially for the new year. We've absolutely loved chatting with so many of you out there to bounce ideas off each other and try to come up with plans to help you achieve specific goals. And seriously, I really do mean this. Even if it's just to say hello and introduce yourself, we absolutely love connecting with our listeners in the community. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel as well if you want to watch these full interviews and also shorter interviews on more specific topics that are taken from these interviews. We've gotten really great feedback over there, and it's also a really fun way to interact with people who comment. We read and reply to every single YouTube comment we get, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and leave as many comments as you like to keep the conversation going. And of course, if you haven't already, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It really is the best way to make sure that the podcast gets out to more listeners. Your 5-star ratings and reviews are the best way to support us here at Boundless Body, and to support the podcast at Boundless Body Radio really only takes a moment, and it's very meaningful to us. Cheers to 2024, and thank you again for listening to Boundless Body Radio.